the politics and the people. We're going to start by saying that the by stating the obvious. Excuse the that's a notification that I'm live on the air. But I'll state the obvious that I am old, so being born in the 50s, I can attest to the turmoil that took place in 1960s. We didn't have the 3 TV channels at that time, and so if you were lucky, you got more than one of them. But the one thing you were going to get after the early 60s was a 30-minute national newscast. And to this very day, the same rules apply to that newscast. That if anything is placed in it, and I'm talking about the type of content like you see on MSNBC, Fox, Newsmax, Sky News out of Australia, you know, it's not real. A lot of it. It's like you are actually standing in the checkout line at the grocery store, and here's all these crazy magazines telling you life's, aliens been living among us, and shows you a picture of Bigfoot. It's like y'all believe that stuff. You believe it. And you should only believe what you hear on the national newscast. And there are only 4 networks that are legally obligated to give the information to you. Fox chooses not to have a national newscast that is broadcast through the ground networks controlled by the FCC, and that's intentional. They have their own local newscast, and it's totally unbiased, just like it's supposed to be. That's what a rock-hard, solid journalist, man, he ain't going to let his attitude, because he hates this guy and thinks he's a dick. And I mean, politicians, some of them can be quite arrogant to you as a member of the press. I was a member of the press for a short period of time. So I can attest that they will, unless it suits their purpose. I know, but I will go one step further and say that I have never met a politician, if you ask them a question, and it was one where it was so obvious that they weren't going to answer it, that they didn't give you an answer that, was totally unrelated. I have created actualities and listened to what they had, of them. So, you can make it work. But in the 1960s, we had the civil rights. We had a president with a doggone conscience. And the conscience had been in the Democratic Party since the 1940s. And that conscience started in 1932. We'd had prohibition, and prohibition had just about took us down. What had happened is they give the women the right to vote, and women had a hard time with their men taking to the drink, and it being just everywhere, and nobody wanting to do anything about it, keeping their families down, taking the families' money, and such. And for some people, they were functional. For most people, would be functional, but you were always going to have those who were going to be over the top. But, that right there, they had gotten the vote, and then the first thing you know, they have a constitutional amendment going. And then are in the state houses getting this puppy ratified. Now, the only The fastest I know of that an amendment has went out for ratification since we've had 48 contiguous states, which that's 1912 when we brought in Arizona. But you know, the quickest was when in 1930, I believe it was 1933, Roosevelt, the Congress, you know, they initiated. But I'll just leave it with this and tell you this story. At the 1932, let's see, what was it? Yeah, the 1932 Democratic Convention. It showed Mr. Roosevelt on stage, and this is what he said: "And we will get rid of that law." And he didn't say what law, but everybody knew what law, and that was prohibiting a man from having a drink of liquor. And then they wondered why in the late, you know, and where people were voting for people. I mean, you had Socialist Party was in this country. You had socialists in this country in the 20s and through the 30s. And they had people on the ticket. So people are acting like what's going on today is, you know, freaking them out. And it should be, but they're getting freaked out for the wrong reasons. What we've got is a choice, and I think it's a pretty clear choice. You're going to have to hold your nose and vote for somebody you don't want to, or either vote for somebody you're going to wish you'd never heard of, because if you think it's been bad for you, it can get worse for your children. And that's a God's truth. If you think it is bad for you, it can be much, much worse for your children. Because I didn't have it as good as my daddy did. And that's a fact. And they took our jobs and they left with them. And they haven't done anything to make up for it. Now, let me approach the word they. Now, what does they mean to you when you hear someone out here and they're in conversation and all of a sudden the word they said is, that phrase is blurted out? What comes to mind? Well, one of two political parties. It hasn't been but, 20, 30 years ago that they said, and you would be listening to what was said, it would be something news from the government. I mean, the internet wasn't in our hip pocket, but it would be something the federal government said. And I remember I worked as a disc jockey, afternoon drive at a radio station, and I had to bring up the CBS News. We were a CBS affiliate, so during drive time, people wanting news, weather, sports, and freaking entertainment. Get me home, country road. But CBS News, they come up and then they said that the Republicans, the president had said that there were going to be, according to his numbers, his cabinets and his whole mechanism within the Republican Party studying this, everybody had on board, that there would be more jobs than we had people. And that can happen. It happened in the time period in which, if you run this video all the way back, you'll know I started in the 60s. But now, let's get uh, bread and butter prices went up. Takes more to make more. Now, price of butter hasn't went up as much as the price of milk. There are reasons for that, because not many people buy butter or care about the price of butter. But your margarine and your substitutes, we're seeing modest increases. But how do you think the price of gold went from $30 an ounce to $700 an ounce? And nothing else, the price didn't go up. I mean, we were on the gold system for I don't know how long, for nearly 200 years, what I understand. So I don't. Well, the Continental, I don't know how they. I hadn't studied that part of history enough to know, whether silver and gold and what they based the paper on, when the Federal Reserve was formed, when any state reserve was formed, or any state-backed money, which is backed by silver or gold, was, rolled out. I don't know that. I'll be ashamed. I maybe shouldn't be talking, but for me to admit that I don't know, and if you don't know, and you're younger, maybe you can learn something that I surely didn't, and move forward. But the way we're looking right now is kind of, sort of, like George Wallace. George Wallace actually was a charismatic individual, and he would say what he thought, and he would tell you in a heartbeat, because he said, and I mean, he wasn't like Donald Trump. He wasn't a counterpuncher. You'd say something to him, he'd just knock you out with words. That's the way he was. He was a knockout artist, one shot. Just give you the overhand right and watch you drop. Because he was asked one simple question. Mr. Wallace, what would you do if a black person chose to lie down in the highway in front of your vehicle? Well, I'm not even going to say what the man said. It's obvious. But that was George Wallace. And he reminds me a lot of Donald Trump. It's like you got Donald Trump, the worst of George Wallace, and the worst part of Ross Perot all rolled into one. Because I don't recall Ross Perot ever getting sued. I love that little fellow. In 2016, I asked Google, who is going to win the 2016 presidential election in the United States? Google replied, Hillary Clinton. A friend of mine came in. He is more tech savvy than I. And I said, Ricky, you'll not believe this, man. I said, watch this thing. It did it again. We just looked at each other like we'd done countless times down through the last 40 years. That ain't right. It can't be right. There's no way we can make it right. In which we haven't had anyone that we've been interested in voting for, except for Obama, in this century. Except for Trump. People everywhere. I mean, put the signs up and really went all out for him. And the more conservative of the conservatives, the ones who, actually can be offended, when the Access Hollywood tape came out, I had a neighbor, and I knew how she was, and I understood when she took her sign down because she was offended by that, and she may have just set that one out. But people have been against the government for so long. But see, if we're against the government, then who is working to hold corporations and these entities within our country accountable? I mean, you got corporations, corporate empires span the globe. You've got where headquarters is overseas, but they've got corporate offices here. I mean, I'm just sure our country is a run with evildoers, but these are the type of evildoers where you never hear about, because what they're doing is not creating, any type of anything except maybe intellectual theft, and you have to kind of get close sometimes in order to do some cyber crime. You have to be on site, so if you can gain access. But yeah, getting back to the 60s and George Wallace, that was a mess. He took 5 states electoral votes. It was the Deep South. Took them all. Every one of them. Georgia, I believe Georgia, Alabama, Florida, South Carolina, and Mississippi, I believe, all gave electoral votes to him for all the good it did. What it did was give us Richard Milhouse Nixon. Oh, Lord. That man, he did as much harm as he did good. I mean, he harmed us in a way by taking us off gold standard and backing our money with gold. But, I remember in the early 60s, they did away with silver certificates. They they didn't do away with them, but what they said was they would no longer honor them. You see what I'm saying? When something is based on something and the way it had been prior to that time, if you presented yourself in person and you had $1,000 gold note, you presented it to the bank, and they're part of the Federal Reserve System, they got to hand you physical gold for that. Now you have to pay huge fees in order to get it. Yeah, politics and people, when you get right down to it, it's the rich love to see us argue with ourselves. Vladimir Putin sitting over there, he's just rocking back and forth in his chair, Yeah, this is going to be my easy years. Donald Trump down there saying, he's a mastermind. Golly. But I don't know what Putin's deal is with Ukraine. Obviously, he wants it. But, if I were Putin, the first thing I'd have done is I'd have took out every doggone power station that they had, and I'd destroyed every freaking bridge that they had, and any any airports that they had, and any facilities that they had. But they still got electricity, running water. How does this work anyway? It seems like it's kind of blowed out of proportion, and Putin's more or less just kind of biding his time and waiting it out. And his waiting it out is this election that's coming. That's what Putin's all about. If he wanted to control that place, he's got the people, he's got the army, you think 500,000 people are all the army that they've got? No. You think that they've shot down every single jet that the Soviets have? My gosh. No. No. They're just waiting on Trump to win. So he'll hand it to them on a silver platter. And that's what it's all about. It's been about. Trump's niece, Mary Trump, that's his older brother Fred, who Donald and his daddy referred to as a glorified cab driver because he was an airline pilot. And, that sounds like something Donald would say. My brother, he's just a glorified cab driver. He flies an airplane. But having a family like that'd be enough to make a man want to take a doggone drink. Because knowing he could never be able to do a thing to satisfy him. And because you have a heart, don't mean you should be treated heartlessly by your own father. That's pretty much the way it worked out. But I can't tell you how to vote, and I'm not going to tell you. But I will tell you that I know we haven't really got a good presidential candidate on either side. But I do treasure the Constitution because it's been what made me living as long as I have possible. Because if it weren't for the institutions in which we have and have had that are built in, and they continually go through changes. But I don't want to see our country go through the change from democracy and our votes counting to constant, you must admit, Trump in 2016 said, well, as long as the election's fair, and he's been setting this election up just like he did for 4 years now that they're going to cheat. In spite of Fox paying 3/4, and I still haven't got over that, $750 million, $750 million. I would just like to have 0.001% of that, please. And could you make it cash? I would disappear. That'd be enough for me to disappear happily for what little time I got left. I'm sure somebody's opening up a calculator figuring that out, but I ain't taking the time. I know it's probably a good 100,000 right there anyway. Yeah, 100,000. Yeah, I could get lost from that. Yeah, at least for a month or two. And I come crawling back. But yeah, it's a hard thing to think about. going to vote. It's a hassle, and it's too just been too heavy on your head. But you know, if you were thinking about not, please go. I don't care who you vote for. Vote your conscience. I mean, you think about. I'm an old person, and when Kamala Harris says that she is going to ask Congress to increase the coverage of Medicaid and Medicare to where it will have nurses trained to in home care to come into your house and help you in those final days of your freaking life. Do you understand how much that costs? If you don't, it will bankrupt a family very, very fast. Very fast. I mean, you're looking, I know of an individual, and around here, we're out in the sticks, and and the people worked fairly cheap. You know, it was $20 an hour, 24 hours a day. And now it's probably, it's 75, 80, 90 an hour. So it wouldn't take long to go through some money. But when you have ideas where includes monies being spent on schools, courses, materials, and to train a force like that, and look at it from an extent of growing what resources we already have. That's the kind of thing I like to hear spoken about, because it's something that affects me. Anything that's going to help the children, of course, I want that done. If it's going to put food in their mouths, and especially those who have a food crisis of some sort, I want them to be tended to. I've been thinking about things like that all my life. I mean, since I became more or less a freaking ward of the state. If it weren't for the fact that I live out here in the mountains, and I did as good as I did for being in the mountains by working in broadcasting, I'd be up on the proverbial SH asterisk T Creek. But, for the grace of God, here I am. But I don't know what's going to happen with the election. All I can do is hope that people are able to see through, and that the polls have been off because of the Trump factor. They hear the word Trump, someone asks them about Trump, and they automatically shut down. They're not going to say anything bad against him because they know something might happen, and people are scared. And I think that's is skewing the poll. I really hope that people are not that over half of the people in this country do not want that half of the people in this country want an authoritarian to come in. And echoing his words, I'll quote him as saying to the evangelical community, after you elect me, you won't have to vote anymore. You just forget about it, having to do that again. That's right, sick. I've heard a lot of sick things come out of Donald Trump's mouth, and that's right hard. I mean, I used to like playing devil's advocate. You argue, this point from this perspective, and I'll argue it from this perspective, and then we'll switch and see if one can best the other by using the other's information which have already been given against them in the argument as you go. You know, they give you ammunition. If you're not aware of what's going on, you at least get that much of an edge when it's turnaround time in the game. But then that's all about your ability to retain information. A lot of people are just going to look at you and say, excuse me? And I'm thinking, excuse me, are you going to listen to me today? Or should I just go back and make an appointment when your brain is engaged? Oh, blessed old man, he's gone, man. He's been gone for a long, long time. I've outlived him by probably, I don't know how many, probably 20 years. He just dropped dead of a heart attack, about 50 years old. Just freaking dropped dead. He taught me carpentry. I got hung up and, you know, like people would think, you know, well, Harris is a prosecutor. She prosecuted people for marijuana. Well, that's what a prosecutor is supposed to do, is prosecute people that break the law. I knew I was breaking the law. I pled guilty. I've never been found guilty or charged with lying or stealing. And I think there's a big difference between, you know, getting busted with some pot and lying and freaking stealing. I think it's a great deal of difference. But pulling time is pulling time. And if you want to call me a con, you can call me a con, but please don't call me a liar nor a thief. No. There's a big difference. But I think Harris is the only choice that we got. That's really the only choice. I mean, you're going to have to hold your nose to do it, maybe, but she's who I'm going to vote for. I'm going to head out there tomorrow, and we do the early voting thing here in Virginia. But we've got a governor who is kind of hinky. You know, he's not as bad as the Speaker of the House. That Speaker of the House, I'm scared of him come certification day. I'm scared of him. I have a feeling the Vice President will be there for that point. But I just don't know about the House, this House Speaker. Kind of wish, you know, Kevin McCarthy was back. At least he knew how to work across the aisle and make a deal. That's where the infrastructure program comes from. We got a bridge right down the hill here, and people ride by it and see it's getting fixed, and it was telling me how they hated Biden and his end. That's exactly what they told me. I mean, you can look at this right here. I ain't been in the barbershop. No. Since 2012. I whacked it off there one time. I mean, he gets to dragging the ground, you start stepping on it. I mean, you know, you gotta be practical. But, yeah, I had to quit going to the barbershop. I wasn't gonna let nobody call the President of the United States the end. No, you ain't getting away with it, boy. You just ain't gonna do it. The last one I went in, It was Christian owned and operated. No profanity. But you could call Obama the N-word any way you wanted to. I listened to it for about 10 minutes. And I stood up and I said, gentlemen, I said, I really hate to say this. And I say it because I feel like it needs to be heard. And maybe, if nothing else, you can hate me, but maybe think about it later. I said, that is a learned behavior. And I said, it can be unlearned. I said, you learned that as a child. You were taught that. And it is wrong and you need to change it. Oh, no one enjoys being challenged like that. That's the way it goes sometimes. And Trump, he learned from Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn, counterpuncher. In the McCarthy era, back in the late 40s, early 50s, he's hauling the doggone people in out of Hollywood and out of Washington. Anyone who might offer a little bit of resistance. I mean, it was a true witch hunt. I mean, there were people where they were made, like Clark Gable, he was above reproach. But everybody went up there that didn't do exactly right, and for the committee, were, put on blacklist, blackballed. And there wasn't anything that they could do about it. And the culmination of it was finally, the people began to see through it. And a congressman, doggone, I'm so sorry, I don't remember his name, Lord rest his soul, he stood up and he said, "Sir, do you have no shame?" In that tone. And the room went quiet. And that marked the doggone death spiral of the McCarthy era. But Roy Cohn was his main go-to. He's like Nixon and Roger Stone. About the same difference, except Roger Stone, what he did was brought the corporations and their money to Washington, D.C. and taught the corporations how to doggone pay off in these back rooms to these doggone politicians. Now, if you want to vote for a politician, vote for one that's willing to clean it up. You want to see a political party generate, something from coast to coast, build one. Grassroots out. And the internet be good for that. Donald Trump's done proved it with all the millions in attorney fees he's paid out. I expect his attorney bills approach $1 million, $1 billion. At least $1 billion. Overall, probably for corporate and everything. But we can't let Trump be elected president. We just can't do it. We can't do that. I mean, I feel bad that the man had somebody throw lead at him. I'm so sad that for the man who was hit in the doggone head and left behind his family. And I think there was another was wounded. But I feel, I think I counted 4 shots. That's just me in my mind just now, playing the video back. It's a curse. It's what it is. But we can't let Trump be president. He wants to change the game, and Mitch McConnell changed the game in the Senate. We let him do that, and you see where it put us, where that led to. We've got a court up there where it's so doggone conservative. I haven't seen anything like that. Not in my lifetime. That's more liberal court. Court's more liberal than this one. Back in the 1950s. And especially in the 70s. In the night, Nixon asked for a report to be done in Congress, and it was, and I believe the House Senate Selects Committee on Crime put out a report about drugs, and those reports, they're lengthy and more or less like a transcript, of what the proceedings. That's what it is. But they always have a finale, so to speak. It's called In Conclusion. And the one member that wrote this, he's about 60. He's about my age. And, being older like that, he realized if somebody wants to do something, they're going to do it. Why make them have to do it in secret and to have to go through the psychological ramifications? He said that in his summary, he said that this, if we're not careful, it would create a subculture within our culture, and that's exactly what it did. And it's sad. I hope I can convince y'all that the right way to go is to go after these people who sent all your parents' jobs overseas and start taxing them like they did back in the 1940s after the war. They taxed the businesses back then. And see, since Nixon and Roger Stone, it's been these lobbyists coming in up there, and that's why the rich man don't pay anymore. And the people, the little people, what I call little people in business, are the ones where the business is maybe grossing, $20 million a year. That's little. That's little. $20 million and under. Something needs to be done. For them. I mean, you couldn't employ 500 people for that. Not unless you're breaking even, making nothing but doggone plastic spoons. You'd be making a buku of them. But wouldn't work about 3 months out the year. Well, I'm going to get on down the road. I hope you'll vote for Vice President Harris for President of the United States. It's, I believe, honestly and truly, the only choice that we've got is Kamala Harris. It's the only choice we've got. If we vote for Donald Trump, we're voting for chaos. Because that means the Soviet Union is going to challenge NATO. And Donald Trump will pull out of NATO. So there's Vladimir Putin and his ideas about Poland will come true because he says Poland belongs to them, and Poland knows that it belongs to them. So I man, I'm gonna carry on here. I'll just sit here and talk. Man is so Looney Tunes. If they tried to get along half as hard as they tried to doggone connive one another, this world would be a glorious place. I mean, we need to, until we can get rid of religion and rid ourselves of inhibitions and apply common sense. And I don't see that coming for at least another 1,000 years. I don't see no way. I thought it was possible. In my 30s, when I was thinking about it, in my 30s, I realized that the social programs in this country were going to have to grow tremendously in order to cover the lapse that we were going to experience by increasing prices on everything from food and shelter. Everything's more expensive right now than it was in 1990. And everybody's griping about what the prices are. When you borrow the money that was borrowed during the Trump administration, that's $10 trillion. Now, $2 trillion was borrowed by the United States from the United States Treasury. It's a total different thing. That means we're printing $2 trillion. $2 trillion. And that's devaluing. It makes the rest of the money worth less right away. Right away. But what you don't see is the effects of that. Because during COVID, we are what is called a consumer-driven society. And during COVID, Jeff Bezos might have been getting it, and the cable providers and telephone companies, but Walmart, big box stores, but everybody was just staying home. They're either fighting, the legislatures and local officials. I mean, in 2020, and people ask the question, we'll ask the question, are you better now than you were 4 years ago? And I'm thinking, hell yeah! And everybody's acting like, they like it or not. One thing, got the COVID. It's around. Knock on wood. Knock on wood. That COVID's, ain't hidden. As virulent as what it was when it first hit. I'm thankful for that. I'm very thankful for that. But it's, what would you say? Oh, my cat. He's sending me a message. Yeah, I'm gonna check him out. The old bud man. He looks good. Little bald cat pair. I've been thinking about. Oh, you gonna speak to him? I don't know. He's a good old kitty. He'll spend as much time sitting in my lap as I'll allow. Yeah, he's good company. Yeah. Harris, the president. Wow, buddy. They do something about your breath, brother. I mean, halitosis kicking hard, kicking like on Gunsmoke, Matt Dillon's horse kicks fast as a mule and passes gas. Ooh, oh, that's rough, ain't it? Yeah, y'all need to come by and check me out. I started playing the electric guitar 18 months ago, this past Friday. Yeah, you need to check that out. Yeah, it is pretty cool. I got a playlist. It shows me, starting out. I've got over 1,000 videos. It's a hoot, man. But I'm doing better than what you might think. You can give it a listen. There's the pings and dings, but you're gonna have that with the rough. Giving Hendrix, Clapton, and let's see, Mark Knopfler. If I can play that last real fast picking lick. I learned the do 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 boom 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 boom. And oh man, yeah, that's a hot break. I was just thrilled to get that under my belt. Oh, it's a feeling. Music's a feeling. And if you want to share your emotions with people, music is the best way to do it. You can tell people things with music that to this very day there's no human being that can come close to expressing what you feel. And that's the absolute truth. See, for us in English, an A is an A. It has neither a numeric value or a thought connected with it. So it's an A. But in other languages, the alphabet is made that way. And so when you process information like that, I mean, have you ever, do you ever catch yourself when you go to the top of a page looking at the left-hand side of the page and then going back? I mean, at the right-hand side of the page and then having to go back to the left-hand side of the page. It seems natural for your eyes to fall right there and go backwards when I turn the page in a book. But maybe that's just, unique to me. But Harris is the candidate I'm going to vote for, and I'm trying to talk everyone else into voting for Harris. And if not that, at least you ought to take up music. It might help with some of the stress of politicking. Expressing your political viewpoint. But I do appreciate y'all hanging out. Yeah, I'm in the Blue Ridge Mountains. You can look up Bull Mountain, Virginia. And there's been a whole bunch of people. And aircraft, they thought they had it under control. I hate to say anything bad about people's flying skills. Had a bunch of people flying in, missed the airport over here, missed, and flew right into the side of the mountain. And back during World War II, they was doing training missions. I don't know whether it was B-24 or B-17, It went down in the mountains, or what? I don't really know what type of aircraft it was, but I know it was military, which back then it had been the Army Air Force, most likely. Oh, man. Yeah, for those who've been keeping up with me, quit smoking cigarettes. I'm proud of that accomplishment. And, and no, I didn't pull all my hair out. I still got it. I'm scared to go to the barber shop. Afraid them Republicans jump on me and pull it out. I wore it short, close to my head, all my doggone fighting years. 'Cause they wasn't no man gonna get a hold of the hair of my head and beat me in my face. There wasn't no way I'd seen that happen. I cut my hair right away. That boy, that man took teeth out of that boy's mouth, fractured the orbital socket, broke his nose. I mean, it was a real mess. And all he was doing was he would take his head in one hand and bring his head down and bring his hand up. I mean, this guy had went up to him and broken his nose. This guy was blinded. And then he opened a blitz on him. The guy, I seen his hand go up over his shoulder. He got that boy by the hair of the head, and he went to town. He told me later, he said, I couldn't see a doggone thing. He said, but I remembered after he did that, what my daddy told me. Find the hair on top of his head. And he did like his daddy had told him. And he said that's when he felt like he had a chance. Because that was in prison. And it's kind of, sometimes it gets to be, either you do or you get, hurt real bad. Which, it's hard thing to see. And that's all because I like smoking pot. But that, you have to be there to know how Jesus and the people worked. I mean, they voted alcohol out of existence, and then they changed the Constitution again and let alcohol be a right. You have a right to liquor, the same right to liquor as you do to have a gun and run your mouth to anybody you want to. I mean, where else on the face of the earth, and y'all want Donald Trump to be president and do away with that? I declare, I swear, I can't see it. I mean, I love my fellow human beings. I honestly do, and I can, and I feel a kinship to people who died 1,000 years ago, who lived and were in their final days of reflection about themselves and all the people and all the information that they'd ever known, and trying to put it together and have it make some sort of sense or some sort of reason to them as for them having been here. And it's so if you want the best, you want the best for all. If you don't, So I think we're short on the growing aspect. Aren't growing. Humanity's not growing. I look at humanity. It's just the way we treat people. The lowest class. If that's where we got us, what I have to say in order to get the point across. People who have very little. What Donald Trump refers to as the S-hole countries. I don't understand. But I guess people need to hate. I heard someone talking about that in one chat room, and that people, it was kind of like a buzz that they got off of it. Getting all fired up and get an adrenaline buzz, and and get the neurons firing in here or some crap. I don't know. When you get on the internet, I'm looking at it kind of like when I get information off of here. It's kind of like Saturday Night Live. Accuracy. Rating me. It might be based vaguely in fact. This person's won't look like Donald Trump. This won't look like Hillary Clinton. Yeah, okay. Well, I can go for that. Anything else factual? Well, maybe. It's a real interesting conundrum. Democracy or autocracy? And that's where Donald Trump would tell the Congress what to do, and the Congress would do it. Well, ain't that what's been going on since Joe Biden's been president? I mean, really. They had a good border bill. I mean, I'm an Oklahoma senator. I'm ashamed to say I can't remember that good man's name. But I apologize, but he is conservative, and he worked with them, and he said, and even some Republicans that are out of the deal said it was the best one that seen. All the border people, border patrol people were, in favor of it, wanting it. They were going to have increase the processing staff to get the people who are backlogged 5 years. I mean, it'd be a no-brainer. It's it's a bottleneck. There's your bottleneck. I mean, it's simple logistics. They've had technology, logistics. I mean, and anybody would say, you mean to tell me they didn't realize that's a bottleneck? Yes, they realize that's a bottleneck. Why do you think they keep it there? Because you got people who, anybody that runs business in this country, that business ain't going to make that much profit. Not unless it's related to something that's real big, like Amazon. And back in the day, IBM, they're at Powerhouse, and then of course you had Detroit. Nobody wasn't going to mess with them. Heck, look at the price of a car. Look at the price of a gallon of gasoline. From 1979 all the way up till 2000, I believe it was 2000, 2004, you could get gas for 99 cents a gallon for over 20 years. Then when Bush decided to, after 9/11, decided to go in over into Afghanistan, which was a mistake. It was a big mistake. Ain't nobody ever beat those people. Nobody. Where you think Genghis and Kublai Khan come from? You ever heard of Genghis and Kublai Khan? My gosh. But many, many moons ago, a millennia plus. Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't even think about that. Me, at that time, I was so busy working that I was just pumped and filled it up and went in there and paid for it. That's how hectic it was for me. Back then, I was one of those people where if I wanted something, I paid for it, and even if I knew the price was more than what I would pay if I were to go somewhere else, I'm standing here. I don't want to go somewhere else and get what I can already get standing here. Now, that's my mentality. I don't mind saving a dollar. I think everyone should save at least 10% of their total take home every week. And you look, okay, there was an economist